to destroy Lebenstrieb. He called the desire to live Lebenstrieb and the desire to destroy Zerstörungswut or the desire to destruction. And you could then, this is of course over simplified, but this is pretty much, you could say, or I always called Freud's pleasure system some sort of a micro-utilitarism, and this meant that that you as a child, or if you are a child or newborn, you have some sort of archaic urges in you, and these archaic urges want to relieve a desire or get a pleasure, and in your youth you somehow immediately want to satisfy these pleasures, and if you're stopped by it or whatever, this is a setback. But then more and more, when you get socialized, then your Über-Ich creates itself. This Über-Ich, this is just, you have to say rather some sort of how you behave. You learn behavior, you learn how to behave yourself, you learn how to conduct yourself through your parents, through your society, and so on. So this Über-Ich, you could say, is some sort of a censorship, which is socially as well as culturally what you should do and what you should do not. And then later you could say this pleasure, this archaic pleasure or this back pleasure, some sort of either uses the good manners, good behaviors to obtain pleasure, or it does not obtain pleasure, and this is then some sort of would lead to frustration. So if you do not get your pleasure relieved, if you can't relieve yourself, then you get frustrated, aggressive, and so on. There are many forms, or you are put under stress. This is psychoanalysis, and then people thereafter develop a certain kind of behavior. They are either aggressive, they are either introverted, secluded, whatever. Some people, this is like how people deal with stress. How do you react on it? Some people eat a lot, some people get aggressive, others secluded. This is rather personality, but as well as how in your family and society people deal with setbacks, you have to say, because of course you cannot get everything you want, and that your pleasure, or as the psychoanalyst says, that in the childhood, the child some sort of is egoistic in its seek for pleasure. It doesn't care about anything at all. This is indeed questionable, because I doubt that I'm well aware, or I assume that a child as well is able to empathy and whatever, or even able to think not only for himself, but as well as on others. However, this is the approach of the psychoanalyst, that this is very egoistic, and then through socialization, through their environment, or so they some sort of mitigate this pleasure, or this desire, this urge to satisfy their pleasure to a reasonable behavior, or into a behavior. It is translated into a behavior which is socially accepted and is not being reprimanded, and so on. And when we follow the psychoanalysis in that sense, this would mean that it is some sort of close to come to the conclusion that object which does not give you pleasure, or which doesn't help you to satisfy your pleasure, becomes some sort of hated. This is the famous object relationships within the psychoanalysis. This is one huge research field within the psychoanalysis, and this would then mean that the child who does not get their pleasure satisfied. In that sense, pleasure would mean that love. So this child, for example, does not get love from its parents, yet it cannot hate this parents, but or whatever. It is still dependent on the love of this parents, and this then leads to some sort of ambiguous feeling towards the parents, especially if this love the parents gives to the child are in a way ambiguous or whatever. This can have, of course, a lot of reasons. I don't want to go into the detail of this, but it meant just children as well as everyone else were sick or wants to get attention, wants to get love, and then especially some children in their childhood, they either did not get any attention, or the attention they got was not enough for them, that they later seek more attention or so whatsoever. This is some sort of the main narration within the psychoanalysis, and there we could derive the thought that the cause of hate therefore is the deprivation of love. So and this would then mean you hate everything which does not love you. This would be pretty much the simplest solution. I mean, I do again. I have to emphasize. I really break down some key elements of the psychoanalysis. Nevertheless, this is some sort of our understanding. So everything that derives some sort of or deprives us from pleasure is hated, and so on. But of course, this is some sort of, if you think about this, it is not only oversimplified, but it is some sort of, you have to say, yeah, it is not very sufficient, or it appears as not very sufficient, because you then assume that all relationships in your life, that they are only built on love. And we have said in one definition that love is indeed, you have to be aware of fear in that sense, which correlates with hatred, that this has indeed a reasonable object. So that fear is not, and in that sense, if you would translate it in the psychoanalysis, and this would mean that the child fears that it's been not loved, and this then therefore fear or hate. This leads to hate, and then you could some sort of explain this, but fear has indeed a real object, and this is where we some sort of have to say, yeah, this does not sound very sufficient, and we will some sort of further inquire in this matter. I mean, indeed, in the English language, there I found two words as well, and this is fear, and the second thing is anxiety. And some sort of the definition of fear is, or the definition of fear is some, if you again Google it, then fear is being defined as an unpleasant feeling triggered by a perception of danger, or real or imagined. And this again emphasizes the fact that fear has to be always fear about something. It is real, either imagined or whatever. It has some sort of a fixed object, and this is meaning, and this is in our discussion indeed important. And this means that you just simply have to know what you are afraid of or what you fear. This is what it means. And then I some sort of try to emulate this separation between Furcht and Angst, what you find in German. I try to translate it into English as well, but of course, this was not very easy because I found the word anxiety and anxiety. I think it is pronounced anxiety, anxious anxiety. And there, if you read the definition, it is rather physical. So this means the anxiety is rather the physical perceivable expression of fear you feel either of you see or perceive whatever at the on the body, face, or whatever of someone, of its posture and so on. So this really does not make sense in that sense because it has nothing to do with this separation that angst in that sense would be rather unconscious. It is not that you do not perceive, yet we will some sort of adopt it because especially for later we will some sort of keep in mind that there is indeed a separation, and this meant that if I fear something, I know what I'm fearing about, and this just means, if I go alone into the woods, and if I live somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in Canada or whatever, then I will, or in North America, in general somewhere, then I will most certainly account a wild beast, whatever, and then this fear would be some sort of an object, whatever. So it is visible, it is clear, whereas anxiety would be rather I fear. For example, many people fear of being alone in their homes overnight and so on. And if you would ask them, yeah, well, what are you afraid of, or what are you afraid of, what are you anxious about, they would not tell you. And there are a lot of stories of people when they get alone, they all get distressed and so on. They even imagine that, or some have some horror notions, whatever. If you especially watch some horror movies, have you noticed this is always when someone is alone, then he's been haunted, or this person is some sort of in all kinds of situation does something. This person is not aware that a murder is coming close, and this is some sort of leads in horror movies always to some sort of intense feeling, and some people feel this intense feeling as well as at home. This does not mean that they are someone close or whatever, but people feel generally uncomfortable or in any situation which wouldn't be so threatening. However, we have to be at another clear aspect to fear is, and this is that it has to be in a way or another life threatening, because or in a way harmful. This was part of the definition of noxious. It has to be perceived as harmful to your mind, to your fear, and so on. And this fear can be imaginary as well as real. We will talk about this as well, and try to find an understanding for that. Of course, we talked about a little bit fear is objective. Fear in that sense, let's adopt it. We say we go the first path, and this is that we say fear is not imaginative, or the object what you are fearing is not imaginative, it is real. And then, for example, the danger of being attacked by a wild animal is clear. We all know the movie Sharks, or if you only see sharks in movies, then you see that some fear is reasonable, or people assume whatever, even though we know that sharks attacks are very rare. But as well as if you go somewhere into the wild, it is likely that you can be attacked by wild animals whatsoever, by dangerous animals, wolves, bears, snakes, what have you. And